Today I'd like to talk about our rain catch, how we built it and what our thoughts were when we were building it, ideas and whatnot. This is our first flush. This is the pipe that brings the water over to our tank. This is our tank. It's designed to be a 550-gallon tank, but it holds a little less than that maybe from the overflow. It's built up on 3 layers of block. We used a ball valve for the outlet. The idea was that we would get better flow. Now I accidentally, perhaps without thinking it through, restricted the flow from the inside, so we don't get the volume out of it that I would have preferred, but it's still decent. I'll show you how and why I restricted the flow from the inside and what I'll do to remedy it in the future. So let's talk about the whole system from start to end. Our gutters run the length of the back of the house. Now originally they were angled down this way towards this barrel, and the other one was angled down this way towards that barrel. And there was no outlet at this end. When we decided to put the rain barrel in, the gutter had to be re-leveled. So, as best I could, I moved the slope at this end higher and brought this end, if it'll focus, down here as low as I could while keeping it mounted well on the roof without having the flashing being too high. So what that's done is it's brought most of the water from about midway down to the tank. This barrel here still gets some water, but it takes easily 3 to 4 times as long to fill as this barrel. So after re-leveling it, we added some gutter, downspouts I should say, and brought it into PVC. These larger pieces are all 4 inches, and we have 3 inches here in the middle, and there is a reason for that, and 3 inches goes across here. So the reason we went from 4 to 3 and then back to 4 was that inside of this first flush there is a 1-liter soda bottle, and normally it's sitting down here. It's empty and it's capped, so it's buoyant. When the rain starts falling, it'll float. As the first flush fills up, the bottle rises, and when it gets to the 3-inch pipe, it stops and creates a partial plug. I don't think it seals completely, but the idea is that it'll keep the debris that may be in here from floating up and washing up into the tank. The first flush I had mentioned in another video. I don't know if it'll be on here, but I built it with 2 vertical pipes. The reason I did that was to get enough volume. I left the horizontal pipes wide enough that if I decided down the road I could cut them and add 1 or more vertical pipes, or I could cap them. That was my neighbor, don't know what he's doing, if I decided that was too much water. So far I think it's proven to be pretty decent. Okay, nice. So on the bottom of the first flush, I don't know if we'll be able to film it. It's kind of dark. There's there's some ants on my house I gotta get. there's a very tiny hole here. I drilled it with the smallest drill bit I could. That way, after it's done raining, this can drain slowly. And it drains while it's raining too, but it's a minuscule amount. And that'll keep it from turning into a swamp in here. Also, you can unscrew this end cap to completely drain it and clean any muck out. Good idea to do it fairly regularly as you're getting rain, because it gets kind of grody in there. I hooked the first flush onto the house just using strapping, and I put it into places where I knew there was a stud. I don't know what that guy's doing. So that the screws could be long enough that they would anchor well and hold. I didn't want it to just go into the siding, because that's not, I mean, it's thick, but it's not as thick obviously as a stud. Okay, I think the neighbor's done making noise, hopefully. So, after it fills the first flush, the water comes over here. Now, I made a little cable tie that goes up to the roof. I'm sure, I mean, this doesn't fill up. It only, gets enough to, what it needs to run over to the tank. But I thought maybe if it was getting a lot of water, it would be a fair amount of weight, because this pipe is, I don't know, 4.5 feet, 4 feet long. So I put this here just as a precaution. Crimped it, put a screw in up here, and just put it on there. Not much support, but a little bit. When it comes over to the top of the tank, this is screened off, so it catches some debris that's made it through from the first flush, and also there's a screen on the top of the downspout inlet. So the water comes through here and then falls into this screen. Now, this tank had a lid here. I'll grab it real quick. It was pretty much sealed. It has an air vent inside, but I wasn't going to be able to get the water into the tank if I had that, so I had to come up with a way to make it be open to receiving rain, but still sealed off as well as I could to keep bugs and debris out. What I did was I took a couple pieces of plastic and a sink strainer and siliconed them all together. And then put it in place. Now, it's okay if the rain is just kind of, light, medium, but when it's raining really hard, the water doesn't come out, straight and nice. It kind of splays it out, so we lose some of it to the outside. So something I'll have to think about. The lid here unscrews and pulls off. There we go. And then inside, you can see the water. Brought a flashlight. I don't know if that'll help. Probably not. It's already pretty bright out here. Not really, but you can see the reflection. Try to be careful not to drop my camera in here. Now, I'm not going to be able to see it. So the outlet for the tank here, on the inside, there's a threaded adapter. And on that threaded adapter, I screwed a hose. And that hose is maybe 5 or 6 feet long enough it can reach up to the top of the tank and also across. To the end of that hose, I attached a toilet float, a clean new toilet float for the buoyancy, and I just used a hose clamp. So that way, the hose is brought up to the top and held maybe a foot, a little less than a foot, below the surface of the water. The upper range of the water is supposedly the cleanest. The surface you might have some floaties on, and the bottom you'll have, everything that's settled out, dirt and whatever. So in the column, in the middle of the column, is where you're going to have the cleanest water. Not probably strictly necessary for watering the garden, but I wanted to do it well. So anyways, the hose that I got is a, I don't know, 5/8 maybe even 1/2 inch. It's a pretty small hose. It was a drinking water safe hose, and I went cheap on it, and it's too narrow. It restricts the flow of the water and doesn't let the ball valve flow as freely as I wanted it to. So at some point, once we use up the water, or we decide to drain it for whatever reason and clean it, what have you, I'm going to be replacing that hose to get a better flow. It's fine for filling a water can, or watering around a tree or whatever, but it's just frustrating not having it flow as well as I think it should. The overflow, let's see if we can film a little bit of that, actually goes all the way to the bottom of the tank. The reason I did that was that so as the tank overfilled, it would pull the water from the bottom where all the debris had settled, in the hopes that it would pull some of the dirt and muck off the bottom. So it comes up, there's a small hole here. The reason for that hole is to let air in, so that once the water has risen to the level that it starts outflowing, you don't want to create a vacuum in your line and have it suck all the water out. So by putting this air hole in, you will help prevent such a situation. Once it's gone down below the level that it would just basically fall out of the piping, it'll stop. So it comes out, and we weren't real sure about how far we wanted to run it. Basically, we used up the leftover pipe that we had, and this is, I believe, 2-inch pipe, and nope, 1.5 here. So ideally the outlet would be as big as the inlet, but this tank, this is the size of opening that this tank came with, so we just used it. If it really overfilled, if for some reason this couldn't handle the flow, eventually it would just come out the lid at the top, the small opening in the top, and it would fall out that way. So it's not a big concern, and we had a torrential downpour and it kept up with it from a few days ago, so no big deal. I don't think I glued these. The first flush is totally glued together. Once I dry fit everything and was satisfied with how it fit and would function, thought about it, planned it out, at that point I glued it together. But this isn't going to have any weight or pressure other than just basically a waterfall of flow, and even if it came apart, it's not that big of a deal, because it's just going to squirt. The water's going to come out here instead of over there. At some point we may make that run longer. The ground slopes down this way, so it's okay. It just kind of slowly trickles over towards our trees, and eventually this will be planted here as well. There's a screen over the end here to keep lizards and bugs and whatnot from climbing up into the tank and drowning. I don't know as though they could get up that pipe. They probably could. Lizards, we have geckos that climb on the windows, but anyways, we wanted to keep critters out, so that's why that's there. And I think that's about it. We had to, when we were deciding how high to elevate it, just putting the lid on here, we wanted to make sure that we were high enough that we would get some decent flow. The higher it is, the better the water flow is. But on the flip side, it had to be below a certain height, or we weren't going to be able to get it to meet the gutters how we wanted. If we had not done a first flush, we could have just come, straight from where the downspout would be, and then over and down, and we could have, maybe gone up another foot or two, but the way we wanted it made with the first flush, we had to settle with basically getting it as high as we could. And I guess that's about it. Eventually we want to plant vines around it. I know we'll need access to it if we need to do maintenance or whatnot, but that's lesser of a concern. We want it to be aesthetically pleasing. We did paint it. It was originally black, and it's just, you know, it's hot here in Arizona. It absorbs the sun, and even with it being painted this light tan, it still absorbs quite a bit of heat, but not nearly as much as being black. We painted it with an elastomeric. We'd gotten at Home Depot that was on a discount rack. Somebody had requested it to be mixed and then never bought it. So we lucked out. We got it for cheaper than normal price, and it was a good color for us. It matched, you know, the colors we wanted to have. I guess you can see here the black. The whole tank was black like that. And we did keep it out away from the fence and the house so that we could get around to the side if we needed to maintain it. If it ever, you know, was to spring a leak or something, we could get to it. We can't get to the bottom. Well, that's another thing I could mention is inside of these retaining wall blocks that we elevated it with, we placed a lot of the rocks. Let's see if I can get it. These rocks here that we, every time we dig a hole to put a tree or anything, there's a ton of these rocks, and we pick out the large ones by hand, and we sift out the medium and small ones with a mesh, a wire mesh. So anyways, we had a bunch of them, and also from the chicken yard. So we just piled them in the middle and, you know, tamped it down, and they were all different sizes, so they, you know, settled pretty evenly. And I actually took a straight edge and skimmed them off once they were packed in, so that there weren't, you know, ones poking up into the bottom of the rain tank. Alright, I guess that's good. Thanks for watching.